High Admiral Vexthor of the Nexary Empire stood on the command deck of the Celestial Dominance, his iridescent scales reflecting the starlight as he studied the holographic display before him. The small human vessel that had wandered into their territory looked almost comical against the backdrop of his mighty fleet, a mere speck of dust compared to the crystalline warships that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Magnification increased, High Admiral, his second-in-command, Subcommander Zil-Ra, announced. Her mandibles clicked in poorly concealed amusement. The humans call it the Prometheus. Preliminary scans indicate it's a research vessel. Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered in what passed for a smile among his kind. A research vessel? In contested space? Either they're incredibly brave or monumentally foolish. He gestured to the communications officer. Open a channel. Let's educate these primitives about their mistake. The human vessel's design seemed almost archaic by Nexary standards. Its hull bore the scars of micrometeorite impacts, and its propulsion system appeared to be based on primitive fusion technology. The Nexary Empire had abandoned such simple methods centuries ago in favor of their quantum fold drives. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the Prometheus. A human female stood at its center, her dark hair pulled back severely from her face, her uniform bearing the insignia of Earth Space Exploration Corps. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Prometheus," she announced, her voice steady despite facing a fleet that could reduce her ship to atoms. "We are conducting peaceful research in international space as permitted by the Galactic Concordat." Vexthor's secondary hearts pulsed with amusement. International space. "Captain Chen, you seem to be operating under a misapprehension. This sector falls under Nexary protection. Your presence here is unwelcome." The human captain didn't flinch. "Our star charts indicate this is neutral territory, Admiral. We are within our rights to conduct our research. Star charts can be outdated, Captain. Much like your vessel." Laughter rippled across the Nexary bridge. "I suggest you retreat to your primitive colonies before we decide to demonstrate true technological superiority." Captain Chen's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes, not fear, as Vexthor expected, but something else. "Admiral, I urge you to reconsider your position. We have no hostile intentions, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The absurdity of the threat caused Vexthor to bare his ceremonial fangs in amusement. The Prometheus was barely a quarter the size of his smallest support vessel. Its weapons, if it had any, would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain. "Defend yourselves." "With what, Captain? That fusion reactor that belongs in a museum? Those hull plates that look like they were forged in a primitive foundry?" He turned to his tactical officer. "Scan their weapon systems. Let's see what they think will protect them." The tactical officer worked his console, then frowned. "High Admiral, our scans are having difficulty penetrating their outer hull. There seems to be some kind of interference." "Interference?" Vexthor's amusement faded slightly. "From that obsolete hulk?" "Impossible. Increase scan power." The tactical officer adjusted his controls, then suddenly jerked back. "Sir. Energy readings they're changing. The ship is. I've never seen patterns like this." Captain Chen's image still filled the main screen. Her calm demeanor had shifted subtly, taking on an edge of quiet confidence. "Admiral, I'll ask one final time. Withdraw your forces and let us continue our research in peace." Vexthor felt the first stirring of unease, quickly suppressed by centuries of Nexary superiority. "You dare to threaten the might of the Nexary Empire? Your species barely managed to reach your own moon when we were already crossing galaxies." "We learned to be creative," Chen replied simply. "Necessity is the mother of invention, after all." Before Vexthor could respond, his tactical officer shouted in alarm. "Sir! The human vessel, it's changing." The seemingly primitive hull of the Prometheus began to shift, panels sliding and realigning like scales on a living creature. What had appeared to be battle scars transformed into precisely arranged energy conduits. The fusion drive flickered and died, replaced by something that made the tactical officer's instruments scream in protest. "Impossible," Vexthor whispered, all pretense of amusement gone. "What are you?" Captain Chen's smile was razor-thin. "We are humanity, Admiral. And you're about to learn why it's unwise to judge a book by its cover." The Prometheus's transformation continued, and for the first time in his long career, High Admiral Vexthor felt something he had never expected to experience when confronting a primitive species: fear. The transformation of the Prometheus was unlike anything the Nexari had witnessed in their millennia of space exploration. What had appeared to be standard hull plating peeled away in precise geometric patterns, revealing layers of technology that defied their understanding. Through the view screen, Captain Chen remained a pillar of calm as chaos erupted on the Nexari bridge. "Weapons officer. Lock all systems on that vessel." Vexthor commanded, his usual composure cracking. "Subcommander Zil-Ra, coordinate the fleet for immediate." "Sir," the weapons officer interrupted, mandibles trembling, "our targeting systems can't lock onto them. It's as if the ship exists in multiple states simultaneously." Captain Chen's voice cut through their growing panic. "What you're witnessing, Admiral, is the culmination of Project Prometheus. While your empire was busy conquering worlds, humanity was pursuing something far more valuable: understanding." The Prometheus now bore little resemblance to its initial form. Its hull rippled with patterns of light that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around it. Energy readings fluctuated wildly, confounding the Nexari's most sophisticated sensors. "Understanding?" Vexthor spat the word. "Understanding of what?" "Of everything," Chen replied. "You see, Admiral, humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, it's our ability to think differently. When we realized we couldn't match your quantum fold drives, we didn't try to copy them. Instead, we asked ourselves, what if we could fold space itself?" As if to demonstrate her point, the Prometheus suddenly seemed to blur, existing in multiple locations simultaneously. The Nexari fleet's automated defense systems went haywire, unable to determine the ship's true position. Subcommander Zil-Ra's voice trembled as she reported, "High Admiral, they're generating some kind of quantum field. Our sensors indicate they're actively manipulating the probability matrix of local spacetime." "Impossible!" Vexthor roared. "No species has ever managed to stabilize macroscale quantum effects." "No species that you know of," Chen corrected. "We had a different approach. Instead of trying to eliminate quantum uncertainty, we embraced it. The Prometheus doesn't just exist in space, it exists in all possible versions of space simultaneously." The implications hit Vexthor like a physical blow. His empire's technological superiority had always been based on the assumption that there was only one path to advanced space travel, their path. But these humans had taken an entirely different road, one that his people had dismissed as theoretically impossible. "You're bluffing," he declared, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "No primitive species could achieve such advancement in mere centuries." Captain Chen's expression softened slightly. "That's where you're wrong again, Admiral. Our primitive status was our greatest advantage. We had no preconceptions about what was impossible. When faced with overwhelming odds, humanity has always excelled at finding unexpected solutions." The Prometheus's quantum field suddenly expanded, enveloping several nearby Nexari ships. Their crews watched in horror as their supposedly superior vessels began to phase in and out of reality, their quantum fold drives completely neutralized by the human ship's impossible technology. "This is your final warning, Admiral," Chen announced. "The Prometheus can disrupt the quantum stability of your entire fleet. Every technology you rely on, your drives, your weapons, your shields, they all depend on stable quantum states. We can reduce them all to probability waves with a thought." Vexthor's mind raced. Everything he believed about humanity's technological capabilities had been wrong. The simple research vessel was a facade, concealing a weapon that could negate every advantage his people had accumulated over millennia of conquest. Why, he finally asked. If you possess such power, why maintain the pretense of weakness? Chen's answer was simple but profound. Because, Admiral, true strength isn't about domination, it's about choice. We chose to appear weak to give you a chance to reveal your true nature. And you did exactly that. The implications of her words hung heavy in the space between their ships. The Nexari Empire had judged humanity based on appearances, and in doing so, had revealed far more about themselves than they'd learned about their supposed inferiors. As Vexthor stared at the transformed Prometheus, he realized that this encounter would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The question was, would his empire be wise enough to learn from this humbling experience, or would their pride drive them toward a confrontation they might not survive? The quantum field continued to ripple around the human vessel, a visible reminder that sometimes the greatest power lies not in what you show, but in what you choose to hide. High Admiral Vexthor's third heart began to race as he watched his fleet's formation crumble. The Prometheus had expanded its quantum field to encompass nearly a quarter of his ships, leaving them trapped in a state of probabilistic flux. But centuries of military doctrine wouldn't let him surrender so easily. Launch all fighter squadrons, he commanded. They're too small for their quantum fluctuations to be affected. Overwhelm them with numbers. Thousands of crystalline fighters poured from the Nexari capital ships, their neuro-linked pilots confident in their superior maneuverability. The space around the Prometheus filled with darting shapes, each one carrying enough firepower to level a small city. Captain Chen watched the approaching swarm with the same unervingly calm expression. Interesting choice, Admiral. But you're still thinking in conventional terms. She turned slightly, addressing someone off-screen. Dr. Patel, initiate the probability cascade. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Prometheus's quantum field suddenly pulsed with new patterns, and the fighter squadron found themselves facing not one human ship, but thousands, each one a probability ghost, equally real and unreal until the moment of interaction. Quantum targeting solutions failing. Unable to determine true target. Which one is real? The panicked reports from fighter pilots flooded the Nexari command channel. Every time they tried to engage one version of the Prometheus, it would collapse into probability waves, while another would become momentarily solid enough to disable their ships with precise energy pulses. The beauty of quantum mechanics, Chen explained, almost professorial in her tone, is that observation affects reality. Your fighters can't attack us because the very act of targeting us changes which version of us exists in that moment. Vexthor watched in horror as his fighters, the pride of the Nexari fleet, were systematically neutralized, not destroyed, but disabled with surgical precision. The humans were demonstrating not just technological superiority, but a level of control that bordered on the impossible. Second wave, launch immediately, he ordered, his voice hoarse. All remaining capital ships, concentrate fire on their last known position. Sir, Subcommander Zillare interjected, I must advise against this. Our weapons are having no effect, and we're just giving them more targets to. Her words were cut off as the Prometheus executed its most stunning maneuver yet. The ship seemed to fold in on itself, creating a localized quantum singularity that absorbed the entire barrage of Nexari weapons fire. When it re-emerged, it had somehow translated all that energy into an expanded probability field that now encompassed half the Nexari fleet. That's impossible. Vexthor's science officer shouted. They're not just manipulating quantum states, they're converting classical energy into quantum potential. Correct, Chen acknowledged. We call it the Schrödinger drive. It allows us to exist in a state of quantum superposition with our own weapon systems. Every shot you fire at us simply gives us more energy to expand our field of influence. The reality of their situation finally began to sink in. The Nexari Empire, with all its technological might, had been comprehensively outmaneuvered by a species they dismissed as primitive. Humanity hadn't just developed new weapons, they'd fundamentally changed the rules of space combat. "Admiral," Chen's voice was gentler now, almost sympathetic. "Your fleet is effectively neutralized. Any ship within our quantum field can be reduced to its component probability waves with a thought. You've lost nearly 60% of your forces without us firing a single conventional shot. Are you prepared to discuss terms?" Vexthor's primary heart felt heavy in his chest. His entire military career, all his assumptions about species hierarchy and technological superiority, lay in ruins around him. The humans hadn't just beaten his fleet, they'd rendered the very concept of traditional space warfare obsolete. "How?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "How did you develop this technology without anyone knowing?" "Because you never bothered to look past our primitive exterior," Chen replied. "Your empire was so convinced of its own superiority that it never occurred to you that someone might take a completely different path to the stars. While you were perfecting your quantum-fold drives, we were learning to dance with quantum uncertainty itself." The implications were staggering. Every defense system, every weapon, every piece of technology the Nexary Empire relied on was based on classical physics operating at a quantum scale. The humans had instead embraced quantum uncertainty at a macro scale, creating technology that defied conventional military doctrine. As Vexthor stared at the transformed Prometheus, still rippling with quantum possibilities, he realized that this wasn't just a military defeat, it was the end of an era. The galaxy would never be the same after this day, and the Nexary Empire would have to entirely reconsider its place in it. The silence on the Nexary command bridge was deafening. Through the quantum distortions surrounding his fleet, High Admiral Vexthor watched as his empire's notion of supremacy crumbled. The Prometheus hung in space like a shimmering mirage, simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, a testament to humanity's unconventional brilliance. "You should know, Admiral," Captain Chen broke the silence, "that we didn't develop this technology for war. Project Prometheus was born from our deep space exploration program. We were trying to find a way to study quantum phenomena in distant star systems." A bitter laugh escaped Vexthor's throat. "An exploration vessel. We thought we were cornering a helpless researcher, only to find ourselves facing the most advanced ship in the galaxy." "Not the most advanced," Chen corrected. "Just, different. Your quantum-fold drives are still more efficient for conventional space travel. We simply found another way to solve the same problem." On the Nexary bridge, Subcommander Zilare had been studying the readings from their few remaining functional sensors. "High Admiral, I'm detecting something remarkable. The human ship's quantum field, it's not just defensive. It's collecting data. Massive amounts of it." Chen nodded. "That's our primary mission. The quantum probability field allows us to simultaneously observe countless versions of any phenomenon we study. In the few minutes we've been engaged, we've gathered more data about your fleet's technology than years of conventional espionage could have provided." The revelation hit Vexthor like a physical blow. Even in the midst of combat, the humans hadn't abandoned their scientific mission. They'd turned the very act of defense into an opportunity for learning. "Your species," he said slowly, "is not what we thought. Few species are, Admiral. That's the problem with prejudice, it blinds us to possibilities." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Would you like to know what we've learned about your ships? Your quantum-fold drive technology is brilliant, but it has untapped potential. We've observed probability states where it could be modified to achieve even greater efficiency." Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered in surprise. "You're offering to share your findings? After we threatened you?" "Knowledge grows when it's shared, Admiral. Humanity learned that lesson long ago." Chen gestured to someone off-screen, and a stream of data began flowing to the Nexary flagship. "Consider this a gesture of good faith." As his science officers pored over the data, their mandibles clicked in astonishment. The humans hadn't just observed their technology, they'd understood it on a fundamental level and found ways to improve it that the Nexari had never considered. "This is extraordinary," Zilare whispered. "Their quantum field observations have revealed aspects of our own technology that we never knew existed. They've turned our attack into a scientific breakthrough." The implications slowly dawned on Vexthor. The humans could have easily destroyed his fleet, but instead, they'd chosen to learn from the encounter. Even more remarkably, they were willing to share what they'd learned with the very people who had threatened them. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice carrying a new note of respect, "I believe I owe you and your species an apology. We judged you based on our own limited understanding of progress. We never considered that true advancement might come from seeing the universe in a completely different way." Chen's smile was genuine. "Apology accepted, Admiral. Perhaps now we can discuss something more productive than combat. Our quantum field observations suggest there are phenomena in this sector that both our species could benefit from studying together." The proposal hung in space between them, not surrender, not victory, but an offer of collaboration. Vexthor found himself considering how quickly the galaxy's balance of power had shifted. The Nexari Empire had prided itself on its technological superiority, only to discover that true innovation came not from perfecting existing paths, but from daring to forge entirely new ones. "The Emperor will need to be informed," he said finally. "This changes everything. Change can be good, Admiral. Especially when it leads to understanding." Chen's image flickered slightly as the Prometheus's quantum field began to contract, releasing the disabled Nexari ships. "Shall we begin discussing terms for a joint research initiative?" As his fleet's systems gradually came back online, Vexthor realized that this defeat might actually be the Nexari Empire's greatest opportunity. They had sought to demonstrate their superiority, only to be taught a priceless lesson about the true nature of progress. The stars seemed to shine differently now, filled with new possibilities that came from seeing the universe through human eyes. In the months following the encounter between the Prometheus and the Nexari fleet, the galaxy witnessed an unprecedented transformation. The Great Hall of the Nexari Imperial Palace, with its towering crystalline spires and quantum-stabilized architecture, now hosted something previously unthinkable, a joint human-Nexari science conference. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the podium, her Earth Force uniform a stark contrast to the iridescent robes of the Nexari scientists surrounding her. Behind her, a holographic display showed the Prometheus's quantum probability field interacting with various phenomena, drawing gasps of appreciation from the assembled aliens. "The quantum revolution we've begun together," she addressed the crowd, "represents more than just technological advancement. It represents a fundamental shift in how we view the universe, and each other." In the front row, High Admiral Vexthor sat beside Earth's ambassador, his scales now bearing the blue stripe of the newly formed Joint Sciences Initiative. The memory of his fleet's humbling encounter had transformed into something more valuable, understanding. "When we first developed the Schrödinger drive," Chen continued, "we faced the same choice that all species encounter with powerful technology. We could have used it to dominate, to conquer. Instead, we chose to explore, to learn, and when necessary, to defend without destroying." The holographic display shifted, showing the combined efforts of human and Nexari scientists. The quantum probability technology of the Prometheus had been successfully merged with Nexari fold drive principles, creating hybrid systems that neither species could have developed alone. "Our supposed weakness, our young age as a spacefaring species, proved to be our greatest strength," Chen explained. "We had no preconceptions about what was impossible. When we looked at quantum mechanics, we didn't see problems to be solved, but possibilities to be embraced." From his seat, Vexthor reflected on how completely his worldview had changed. The Nexari Empire had spent millennia perfecting their technology along rigid, predictable lines. Humanity had simply asked different questions and found answers that changed everything. "Today," Chen announced, "we're ready to reveal the first joint human-Nexari vessel." The hologram changed to show a ship unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The Harmony combines our quantum probability field technology with Nexary quantum fold drives. It can not only traverse vast distances but study countless quantum states of spacetime simultaneously. The assembled scientists burst into excited discussion. The implications were staggering, the ability to not just travel through space, but to study all possible versions of any phenomenon they encountered. But perhaps more important than the technology, Chen continued, her voice cutting through the chatter, is what it represents. Two species, once on the brink of conflict, now working together to expand the boundaries of knowledge. The Nexary Emperor himself rose from his crystalline throne, his ancient eyes fixed on the holographic ship. When we first encountered humans, his resonant voice filled the hall, we thought them primitive, unworthy of our notice. Now they have taught us that true advancement comes not from power, but from perspective. As the Emperor spoke, news arrived from the frontier. The first joint human Nexary expedition had discovered a previously unknown form of quantum energy, only detectable through the combined use of both species' technology. The universe, it seemed, had waited for them to learn to work together before revealing new secrets. Captain Chen concluded her presentation with words that would be remembered for generations. The greatest discoveries don't come from believing we have all the answers. They come from being willing to ask new questions. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't our technology, it's our curiosity, our willingness to think differently, and our understanding that true strength lies in collaboration, not conquest. As the assembly erupted in applause, Vexthor leaned toward the Earth ambassador. To think, he mused, all of this began because we underestimated a single ship. The ambassador smiled. Perhaps that's humanity's other great gift to the galaxy, Admiral, a reminder to never judge by appearances. The universe is full of surprises, if only we're humble enough to notice them. Above the Imperial Palace, the Prometheus hung in high orbit, its quantum field shimming in harmony with Nexary defense platforms. Once seen as a threat, it now stood as a symbol of something far more powerful than any weapon, the transformation of enemies into allies, of conflict into cooperation, and of fear into understanding. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what both species had needed.